morning guys, welcome to day 2 Finest Fest.
We've got Curt here from World Fauna, who's been drafted in to do our live fragging demonstration with some real high-end corals. Curt, do you want to just talk us quickly through what we're going to be doing today?
Okay guys, so today we are going to be fragging a few corals. We haven't beat around the bush, we are going to do some fancy ones, so some scary ones as some people would say. We've got jelly bean chalice being fragged today, which I will bring round and show you guys beforehand. But yeah, we've got jelly bean chalice, we've got a large walling hammer that's come from the wild, so it's been fragged from the wild, and we're going to re-show a nice sensible cut where you can refrag it again. And everyone's fan favourite, the torch coral. We've got a nice gold torch, sort of holy grail, and yeah, we're going to frag that into nice single heads just to show you guys how that process takes place. And then a nasty one, a rainbow anemone, which you can pick up quite nice in shops nice and easy, but we all know what these are like, they're stingers. And yeah, I'm just going to take you through how to propagate one of these. I'm only going to cut it in half, and it might be a messy job, that's all. But yeah, I'm going to cut that, frag these corals, show you the stuff we use, and just try and make it nice and smooth for you, and take some questions, and yeah, go from there. All right.
Okay guys, obviously while Curt is fragging, the bandsaw will be in operation, so it might be quite noisy. We will take a break in between to take any questions, as Curt says. So without further ado, Curt, shall we get going? Let's go.
Right, first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some glue on the frag tiles. Pretty simple. You pick your glue up almost in any reef shop that you locally shop with. Finest Fillet. Yeah, so you want nice safe coral glue. And what we're going to be using is some tiles just today, and we're firstly going to cut the jelly bean chalice so that you guys can see how this sort of works, and talk a bit in depth of fragging it and why it's quite an exciting coral to frag, but also scary. Okay.
Just a quick one as well guys, with the jelly bean frags, we will be selling them at a discounted rate in store following the demonstration. We're going to be selling them at £300 a piece. Usually they would RRP at £425, so a real bargain to be had there.
How many are we aiming for again, Mike?
We're hoping for 10k, depending on how many beers you had last night.
Let's test this. Show you guys the jelly bean, so you can actually see it. Hopefully you all guys can. So can everyone see that? Yeah, nice colours, nice blue, nice red, plenty of eyes, a fair sized colony. And the nice thing about this is we actually bring this to Finest Fest 1 last year, and that is from a frag that's going to go. The frag that's going to go on here was what we bring last year, and that is the result within literally 365 days. So the growth on it is very quick, and you can see all the colours have pulled through from the small growth you're about to see to where it is to now. So that's before, and let's get started on the after.
just bear with us guys, just want to take a little bit of water off the bottom of the saw.
Just for safety. It's spraying everywhere. Sorry, guys. Tip a bit out. Yeah, that's perfect. Just make sure it's not lovely.
So I'm just going extremely slow, so that, because it's quite thick, as you may have seen, the blade keeps catching. Firstly, you don't want to keep that happening, because it will obviously break the blade, which is about 15 to 20 pound break there and then, and it won't affect the coral. As long as you've got water pouring through, the heat that's currently obviously created from this movement, the water will protect you guys and protect the coral. Okay, so no nerves, just keep slowly going through. Don't go too rough with it or too fast. No rush, just peacefully get there, nice and slowly, nice and safely. So it took a little bit longer than expected, but there you go, there's a cut in half. Obviously from here now, what we would do is probably on the griffin, position it like so, and be aiming for like 3 or 4 cuts straight down this half. Now a lot of people try and avoid the eyes, but on a colony this size, don't panic, just get it cut how you want it, and I can almost guarantee you, where this has been aquacultured and fragged and grown out so much, that it will 1,000,000% grow. I'm confident on that. It will just grow, and just keep cutting, and yeah, you'll be all good. So from this now, you could probably get 6 to 8 frags without a shadow of a doubt. But obviously we're going to aim for 8, and we'll do that in a moment. But what I will do now is leave that to rest for a minute. And what we've got in there is some D&D Reef Primer, which I do recommend. Really good product. What this does is removes any pests before and after the fragging, and it will protect your coral going forward. And yeah, it's just a really good, nice, easy to use product. Mix it in with the water and the recommended measurement, and yeah, definitely get that in. What that'll do is look after what you've just fragged. So yeah, nice product to use. Definitely recommend the Reef Primer, guys. Okay.
Just quickly, guys, while Kurt's got the blade off, any questions so far? Yep.
When fragging a chalice, how many eyes would you aim for per frag for it to be a viable frag?
Personally, here at World Fauna, we send frags out of around 3 to 4 eyes. Some people do frag 1 eyes, but what you'll see is a real sort of fingernail-sized frag on occasion, and the success rate of that is almost same as a bigger frag, but not necessarily as nice of a looking product at the end. So I'd always recommend 3 to 4 eyes. Always find that that's a nice looking product, and not just that, it also grows really fast, and within, I'd say, 3 to 6 months, you should expect that tile to be fully filled out by the coral. Then you can even whip it in half again, and even if it's lesser eyes on that half, you'll see the difference in the growth. The more eyes, the faster the growth. So yeah, I would recommend 3 to 4 eyes total on a chalice, okay?
Any more questions, guys? Yeah.
Just sounds a bit of a softy and my fish like family and silver corals. Can we feel it? Because it's technically an animal, isn't it?
Some corals, when you're cutting them 100%, could potentially feel it because you are cutting through flesh. However, some corals, like for example a torch coral, because you're cutting through pure calcium skeleton, I would almost say you're in the safer zone from, you're cutting almost like bone, but rock. Okay, but when it comes to certain fleshy corals, for example, the anemone, that may not be something, like I say, the cut in a moment, it could be one that looks, like I say, quite sensitive, but believe it or not, the difference is, as sad as it is saying, it's harmful to some flesh and whatnot, some of these corals obviously in the wild are, without our help, without our sacrifice to propagate them, culture them. This is a prime example of one actually. These guys are hardly imported from the wild anymore because we cultivate them so much in the wild, in the aquarium now, and they've gone from a price of say £100 down to say 40 from our effort. So it's a catch-22. We almost, some stuff because of what's happening need to cut them, if you know what I mean, to keep them in. Okay.
Any more questions, guys, before we move on? Yeah, one at the back.
Yeah, not everybody has access to a bandsaw, so what would be your go-to tools for, let's say, a chalice drawing?
That's actually a really good one. I've got a few answers for that. So firstly, you can pick up sort of fragging kits, but that limits you on what corals you can frag. So you can get kits with scissors, blades, and they're normally targeting softer corals, zoas, etc. like that. But you then have your local fish store, so like for example Finest. These guys have a saw, and what some people do, for example, I used to do it when I was obviously hobbyist, and I used to frag some corals at home. If I couldn't cut it with a saw because I didn't have one, I would go to my local shop and I'd offer them a frag or two from a large size colony, and they'd frag it for me, and then I'd walk away with say 6 frags and they might keep 1 or 2. And it's almost like keeping up with the friendly economy and the sort of, supporting your local fish shop. So there is that opportunity as well, that you can sort of take up with, say, Mike at Finest and, go through with him. But look, I've got a massive elegance. What do I do? Come in, whip it in half, and you walk away with 1 half and maybe half of those guys. It's honestly just one of those, okay?
Any more, guys? Nope. Good to go, Kurt.
Yeah, right. Right, what we'll do now then is we'll just we'll frag this hammer. It'll be nice and easy to frag. It's basically a colony that's come from the wild. Let me just show you again under the light. So it's a nice green colony, but right here is where it was cut by the divers. So what you will find with the hammer coral in Australia is the diver will go down and find a large selection of hammers, say, and they have some clever drill, some sort of underwater saw, and they will just literally hack these big old hammers right down, just nice straight cut, and you end up with like a large sort of walling hammer which you see in your shops, and that tends to be the cut. Then what the farmers do is brought back obviously to like coral tables in Australia, and what they'll do is they will literally rest it there, and this will heal here, and as you can see the flesh is actually already healed and it's almost growing. Now the growth on the skeleton will be a lot slower than a lot of corals out there, but what you can then do from that is we're going to take it and we're going to cut it once more, and just offer sort of like 2 walling hammers, okay? And yeah, just show it from that. What you will see is some shops actually frag these really small and offer hammers that look like branching hammers but are actually small walling hammers. We don't see it as much anymore, but go back a few years, you used to find a lot of elegance hammer and sort of walling frags. That's calmed down a lot now, and what we tend to do is just frag them from bigger sizes in half or so. So what we'll do is we'll just get that whipped in half and then show you the result of that.
While we're waiting, Kurt, I've got a question for you. You frag every day. What do you find the most difficult coral to frag?
Right. Most difficult coral to frag is, in my opinion, acans, because what people want is obviously a nice small frag with intact heads, and you'll see a lot of frags where some heads are sort of almost cut off at the side, but not fully wiped the head out, not fully taken the acan out. And that's why, because you see with these, you're almost straight cutting. There is another saw that is on the market that I do recommend actually. It's called the inland saw. And I find when you use the inland saw, because it functions in a different way, it doesn't recycle the water. You actually have to pour fresh water in it every time, and you can clearly see where you're cutting, and you can angle a bit better. So I find acans the most difficult, because they're so thick and there's so many heads and such a sort of puzzled skeleton. I find them really difficult to cut, and you will find people fragging them and almost taking off the side of the polyp. Now it does go to show that how hardy that coral is, because 9 times out of 10 that polyp grows back. But it'd be nice to just get a clean cut every time. So that's probably the hardest coral at the moment, I'd say. Well, throughout my time, the acan or a bower banky acan, anything sort of long plating, really thick skeleton, tend to be quite densely grown in the wild. Therefore, they're a lot slower and harder to sort of cut on the saw. All right. What am I going to do? Yeah. So here's a good example of something that's a bit tricky.
So you see as I've cut that, but you see it hasn't got a flat enough edge, it's quite thin now. And this side of the hammer sort of weighing it down, which isn't obviously ideal. So what I'm going to do now is just give that a quick trim to try and flatten it at a right sort of level to offer it a bit more stability. And actually that will offer less chance of it in the aquarium getting knocked over and causing issues. So that is another thing I'd probably do now. At first I thought I'd just cut it in half and it'd be fine, but what I've realised is I'm going to have to obviously flatten it out to protect the coral going forward, okay? Let's get that quick.
Happy with the result?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's get that stuck on there so we can show everyone what I mean. There we go. Hoping you guys can see that clearly. Oh, awesome, I didn't even realise. Right, so that's on the tile, and as you can see now, it's got nice and balanced. I've flattened it out, nice glue, nice clean. There you go. Now what you'll see is that will nicely grow, and it will take a long time to ever reach what we originally saw the size at. But let's get the other half in, and that's more the shape and size we're used to when we buy them, not just a long wall. There we go. So there's one hammer that, in all honesty, doesn't look much different size from the first, and now a smaller, potentially more afforder piece that you can get into the hobby with and try out a hammer. Obviously that won't go on sale straight away, that needs to be rested, and that's another thing I want to come on to. When you frag corals, I highly recommend some frag racks in a low flow area, and place your frags on that area and just leave it for anything for 2 to 7 days, and then sometimes longer, and just keep your eye on them. And another thing I would recommend is 72 hours after fragging, there's no harm in re-dipping. There's no harm in taking that coral into a bucket for an hour with the dip, and just be extra safe, because at the end of the day, what the worries and concerns from this is where you've cut flesh, there is obviously now a chance of infection. So that's why it's key to use primer, because this will come along and deal with any pathogenic bacteria that can form. And one of the common diseases we find in our hobby that is actually quite damaging and takes out a lot of corals. So you all heard of brown jelly disease? Anyone suffered with brown jelly before? Yeah, a few people. It's a nasty disease. It's a pathogenic bacteria. If that comes into your tank from an ill coral, be careful with other euphilia or other LPS. It can spread to trachophilia, it can spread to acans, it can spread to goniopora. And what it is it will, it's like a almost bacterial film. When the torch head's sunken in or the hammerhead's gone in, it sort of covers it. And yeah, it's a pathogenic bacteria that it's quite difficult to remove from your aquarium once it's in. So to avoid getting it in your aquarium, dip regularly, use good quality dips, and yeah, you can achieve some pretty amazing corals that you don't commonly see being fragged and available in your shops or at your own growth. You know, if you've grown some corals at home, you want to save the colonies, frag them. Get them in 2, get them in 4, get them in 6, get them in 8. The jelly bean's a fine example of that. When we first started, who can remember 900 to £1,000 of frag jelly bean? Anyone remember them days? Now what do we pay? 300 quid today? That's how much it's coming down, and I reckon 5 years from now it'll be almost like a generic chalice maybe, but it's from the propagation, the cultivation, from the hobbyists, from 1 eyes, 4 eyes. It's yeah, it's important to cut these corals, but take the necessary products that you got and just stick with them, stick by them, test them, and you'll have good success fragging. It's simple as that. And yeah, let's crack on. I'm going to do the torch coral now quick, but yeah, let's take some more questions.
Yep, fire away.
Can we use that for the corals that we've got that are established and not been fragged? Unless we've kind of got our levels a little bit mixed up recently, which is possible because we need to get an auto data now. We've lost a hammer that we've had for ages. I was really happy.
Yep.
I've got another one, a torch, that one head looks super happy and the other one's sort of not really coming out fully.
Okay.
So we were wondering about...
100%. This stuff isn't just for fragging. This stuff is obviously for pest control.
Yeah.
So take for example this large colony that's not been fragged yet. Before it goes to any aquarium at World Fauna, it receives a treatment where it goes through bacteria and it goes through a process which we dip, and it removes stuff like flatworms, stuff that you might not see with your own eye, that you look at after the dip and you're like, what is that? Alright, so yeah, definitely use that stuff or for any existing corals, any new corals, any fragged corals. Just protect your corals by using some good quality dips. And even existing corals, like I say, you could be introducing a pest from one new coral that goes onto a coral you've had for 3 years, and what that'll do is obviously cause issues. And yeah, so that stuff's good for any corals you're worried about that are existing new. Yeah, just always dip. Anything you ever think isn't like normal, check your parameters. Parameters are all good, dip. Okay.
How frequently would you dip, even just as like a preventative measure?
Now, I wouldn't dip too much, because then you can actually do more harm than not. If you keep pulling the coral in and out, in and out, in and out, dipping, obviously that can be an issue. So you dip on sort of first noticing the issue, and then 72 hours to at most 5 days from the first dip would I then dip again. I wouldn't do it the next day or 48 hours. I'd leave it, keep assessing it. But in the same breath, before I would make sure that on the first dip it's very thorough, very efficient. I'm happy with, even in some cases I might leave it for an extra 20 minutes, or take some of the water out, put some fresh in, just leave it for another 20 and then get it in. Just make sure it's thoroughly dipped, really rinse it off, and then you should have excellent results. Alright.
Great stuff. Any more questions, guys?
I was just going to ask what water are you using in the bandsaw? Are you just using normal tap water or salt water?
No, this is salt water. So basically, I tipped from the bucket. So beforehand, what we did was when we grabbed the corals from the room, grabbed the primer, sprinkled in what we needed across 10 litres, and then we mixed it in, and now I'm using almost treated water. So that's a good question though, because some people actually use iodine as a dip, and they put bits of iodine in the water that you put in before fragging. I've actually used primer, so that's kind of using as covering me and then that iodine. But yeah, what you want to do obviously is never use tap water, always use salt water. Keep the corals always comfortable from your aquarium water. Bring that over, yeah, get some of that in there in a tub, jug separate, 2 jugs almost. get your primer in, or your iodine in, get that in with a saw, and as you're cutting as well, you're using sort of clean cutting, you know, you're using water that's effectively really good for the coral almost, because you're covering too, and then dip again, and yeah, so this is just standard salt water from the coral trays with primer added, and then added to the saw and cut from there.
Great stuff. Any more questions, guys? Yeah, one there.
Yeah, can you share some safety tips as well?
Definitely wear gloves. Regarding the saw, obviously keep your fingers sort of and if you're doing really small frags, what we tend to do is, and I'll sort of demonstrate, is we just sort of keep our tips at the end, but you need to, you know, because it's quite a flimsy coral, you almost need one finger on and you frag in, and then quickly come round and pull through. But again, what you do need to be careful with the saw and your fingers, obviously that's number one. One bit of safety I would say is, I've never been cut by these saws. They're almost, these blades, sorry, these blades are almost designed to, they don't penetrate skin even though they penetrate rock, which seems really strange where they're kind of flexible. I've never really been caught by one, but obviously you will hear of people that have. So I'm not saying go near it with your fingers, obviously, I'm saying keep your distance. But yeah, safety number one with using the saw, as well as obviously I should ideally use some goggles, 100%. But in the heat of the moment, I've forgotten them, look, and they don't look good. But yeah, you should really use some glasses or goggles for safety. And I will say one thing actually, I have had coral dust in my eye, so I should actually have goggles on, because my eye went puffed up and I looked like a hammerhead shark for a couple of days. So yeah, I don't recommend that at all. And one thing I will come on to as well with safety is obviously always use a PPE. You've definitely heard of cases with the palitoxin, with wiping, you know, almost, what's it like, some serious cases have happened with palitoxin. Yeah, some masks, goggles, or avoid fragging zoas. Like there's always that. But yeah, people frag zoas, and we will go into that a little bit. If you're fragging zoas, there is a toxin that it can release that goes airborne, and it is actually extremely harmful. There's been cases where, yeah, families have gone into a state of sort of, well, the ambulance have had to come, and then the firefighters that have gone in and the ambulance staff that have gone in obviously have been exposed to it too. So, and that can be from, again, not using the correct stuff. So tap water, going back to tap water, there has been a case where someone was using tap water, and obviously the coral goes into defense mode, isn't used to tap water, and releases the toxin. So if we can avoid fragging zoas, we will, but it is a massive, massive thing that's fragged in the hobby, and it's also probably the most dangerous thing. So yeah, good shout on that. Safety is important. When using a saw, goggles, gloves, etc., when cutting certain corals, do your proper research. Make sure you know what you're cutting and what it's capable of. There is some stuff out there that can cause some harm. So yeah, make sure you're taking proper safe precautions, which sounds crazy for me without goggles, I apologise. But yeah, what we're going to do now is obviously get the torch cut. And any more questions, keep them coming, keep them rolling. And then we'll do the nasty one, the anemone, which I say nasty, it's just the way we do it doesn't look great compared to using a nice £700 bit of equipment where you can just, you know, breezily get things through. So yeah, let's pass over to you, Mike.
Great stuff. Any more questions, guys, before we move on? Yeah, one. Yeah, couple.
I've seen mention on the internet quite a lot recently with euphyllias that after you dip them and you've got that exposed skeleton, you can then super glue it to seal the wound. Would that be something that you recommend?
It's funny you say that. There has been cases. Now, I'm going to be brutally honest here. There has been cases where stuff is shipped in and the edges, like here, may be damaged. I have trialled and tested stuff like that, and I've tend to failed. People may have had better success, but in my case, I'll be honest, I have tried stuff like that. Nothing exposing the flesh to, say, glue, but just from the outside, just sort of pushing the skeleton back in place, and just with a dab of with my finger, just put glue on it. I've always hoped for the best, but I'll be honest, once you damage, say for example, a torch skeleton, it's quite difficult to come back from that. And I will note that you do have to take some things into account when it comes to torches. I would say they're the hardest coral to keep in the entire hobby, and everyone wants to keep them. And the reason why is exactly what you're saying. Say that little cut on, or the broken skeleton on the head takes place. Every single torch in that tank now is exposed to a potential risk of brown jelly, a disease, because if that does go and does take that damage that's caused, does wipe that head out, and further repercussions from that, every other euphilia then goes into a state of sort of, you've got to take it, you know, you've got to really know what can happen from that. So it's one of them that's almost in the middle. Like, you want to try it because, like you say, it's your animal, it's your creature that you paid for, but with a torch in particular, there is a level of be prepared for the worst. Other corals you'll be okay with, but the torch coral in particular, just prepare for the worst. Keep an eye on it. You know, do I recommend gluing it back? No, and I guess yes, because you've got your creature now and you want to do what you can to protect it. But obviously no, because with a torch in particular, the reality is it could be very damaging. It could be the end of that head in particular. So yeah, tricky one to answer. Good question.
One from yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be covered, but say for example, we've got, you've taken in a load of flags and every time we've grown zoas on your rocks, is there a way that you can kind of safely sort of frag them away from the rock without taking the rock out?
There is, 100%. I can't sit here and say there isn't, because how many frags of zoas do we see in shops? Exactly. And how many, other than me saying today about the toxin thing, we don't have thousands of cases of people dropping from it. So you can safely propagate zoas. I would always use like a long sort of, I think they call it sort of like a scalpel blade, like a, yeah, and just underneath the zoa flesh. Now, if it's on a really rubbly rock, it's going to be really difficult. Yeah, you're almost wanting to cut the rock from almost away from the zoa underneath, like and sort of pull like a ridge out. So that's almost the best option when it's on rocks. But if it's on a smoother, accessible surface, and obviously with the amount of zoa frags we purchase nowadays on smoother surfaces, there will be an easier method with them to cultivate and propagate those colonies or mini frags with a scalpel a lot easier, because it's a smoother surface, you can get in and cut it easier. On rocks, in colonies, in tanks, quite tricky and difficult. You're aiming to cut the rock with a saw.
I suppose you could just think about what you're saying, then you could get like quite a small flat tile or something like that, loosely glue it on, get it to grow over.
Exactly. Very clever. It's exactly what you want to do. And almost what we call that is like putting something to predict for the future with it, and give it what it needs. And yeah, then you can just cut away from your tile. And another one that's actually good to do that with, another soft coral, is if you've got any mushrooms, big mushrooms, and they're not producing fast enough, stick some rubble or discs or whatnot around it, watch it, try and stretch out for it. Now you can actually cut the foot, and what you'll have is what we call like a little bogey. And the little bogey will stick to the new rock that it's growing to, and you will actually have within a couple of months the original shroom reaching out, growing again. Or you can just let it stretch out, and it might split a foot off from the rock it was last on to the new rock. Okay, so yeah, that's another option, 100%. Yeah, be tactical with it. Place some stuff around it that are a little bit looser, so you can offer some frags to friends, shops, or more around your tank in other areas. All right.
Great stuff, Curt. Let's move on. What are we going for next?
That's another thing. Now, if I do this saw quick, see it's gone a bit less water now. When you're fragging your rock, what's going to happen is the dust from the skeleton is going to sort of clog the water up. Then the water goes obviously less coming through, which then puts a coral more at risk. That's another thing with this saw. I'm going to top up with water first, and then I'm going to catch the torch coral.
Great stuff.
would say as well, I'm going to cut this torch. I'm just going to cut it, and this is something that's quite important. I'm going to cut it and give the heads quite a long stem. What you'll find is some shops and people frag from home sort of here across, where my finger's going across there, really short on the pollet. The growth rate and the chances of survival drop massively. Torches with really small stems that are cultivated from larger colonies tend to have less of a, not always, but less of a rate of growth and success of surviving. So give it a nice thick stem, nice long stem, and what you'll find is you'll have, in a year's time, some extra heads across the board, and yeah, it's the safest way to cultivate torch, because as I go back to torch, a lot of people say in this hobby, acropora are the hardest to keep. Try keeping thousands upon thousands of heads of torch with all the disease and all the different factors that can come in. Believe it or not, a clownfish could start hosting a torch head and kill that torch head that could lead on to a difficult process. So acroporas are the hardest to keep, but torches I think need to be appreciated a bit more. They're really difficult to keep and everyone wants to keep them, and there's loads of different variants, loads of different heads available. Yeah, torches are difficult. So when I frag this, I'm going to keep it with a nice long stem, and I'm only going to do them into nice twin double heads. I'm not going to go doing these single little heads, alright? There's one done. Going to get it stuck to the tile. Let's get it nicely stuck down and stay in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean this up. So what you're going to see, if you bring the camera in, there's no way, absolutely no way that's getting glued down on anything. So obviously you're going to flatten that, but again, offer a long sort of stem for the survival of the coral for the long run. Okay? That's that one done. Let's get them stuck on. I won't mess around with the torch because, as you know, I panic about them. Made that clear. So that's them stuck on now. And you see the nice. Oh, let's not do that. There we go. Let's get that sealed first. Let's get that one back. See me panicking with my torches. So there you go. That one's better. Come around there. So you can see the gold. Obviously, I'm not going to leave it out of the water for too long, but that's nicely stuck down now. And nice long stem. Can really see there's a very, very, very successful rate in that. What we're going to do is we're going to leave these here in finest for finest next year. So what we can show you is how these guys do and the success of them over a period of time. Hopefully in the display tank they become nice giant colonies to frag again next year. Right.
Great stuff. Okay, Curt, the one you've been looking forward to?
Not one bit, not one bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to lay this out and we're going to show you how to do this. It's quite a difficult process in my eyes. I actually prefer using the saw and cutting these harder corals to the softer corals, but a lot of people love propagating the softer corals. So what we're going to do is get this tray a bit better. Tell you what, let's get these out of the way now for a minute. Let them rest. And get this one in place. Let's just pierce this bag. Oh, sorry everyone. And we want him laid out nice and flat. Let's get that right open. He's a big anemone, this one. I'm going to show you the foot. See the foot there? nice big foot, nice big anemone. I'm going to put in my hand. And what you want to do, before you start propagating these, you don't want to cut these tentacles. Obviously you're going to be cutting tentacles, but you don't want it to be flapped over cutting them. That's damage, unnecessary damage. And what you want to be doing is just almost like brushing it out like hair, and just getting it all out. So the mouth's exposed, and my mouth's very obvious there, so you can see that. And what I'm going to do, grab these, and this could be nasty job, like I say, nasty to witness. You want to make a little opening, and you also want to find the foot, just double check the foot, it's all in good tact. And then hopefully these scissors are super sharp. What you can do is get it underneath, and then you're going to begin the cut. There we go. That's cut lovely. Actually that's ended up being a lot better than I hoped. There we go. Drop it down into the bag, and as you saw, some tentacles will get cut, but what you now have is the perfect cut of a rainbow anemone in half. So I'll let you see that. And what you have there is one nice half, nice clean cut through the mouth. And again, pull the tentacles back, not the hairs. There you go. There's the other half of the mouth. And it looks gruesome, but what you'll do now is you'll get a basket, ideally, with a peg. This is what I do back at the facility, with a peg, and a basket on the side of my tank with a peg. Keep these anemones away from obviously floating around the tank. So the last thing you want to do now is just chuck that back in your reef, because that's going to go and hit a load of corals, and it will do damage. So get that in a basket, and literally within 48, 72 hours, that whole anemone that's now in half will quickly go back round, the mouth will quickly close round and seal up, and you will have 2 of those very quickly. Now what you can do as well, and what people will do, is I will demonstrate, I won't do it, but I will demonstrate. They'll take the scissors now, after a double cut like that, and they'll cut straight down the middle again, and they'll actually produce 4. And then with the 4, they'll go and cut it again, and again, and again, and just keep doing 4s. And that's how you've seen these anemones come into the industry, and they originally, you know, far and few between to where they are now. There's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of them out there in shops and in tanks. And not just that, let's not forget, you don't actually need to do that. You can just leave that coral naturally in its position in the tank, and what it will do is it will go like so and just split into 2. We've done obviously a forced way of doing it, but it won't be an issue. It doesn't look great, but as you can see, you know, the mouth is very much exposed, a lot of flesh in a foot. Let's turn it around quick just to show the foot. There you go, look. You can sort of see how clean it is through the foot. Doesn't look so clean through the mouth, but through the foot looks a bit better. And like I say, they'll heal up within 2 or 3 days. You'll have 2 anemones, and probably within 7 to 14 days it won't be in this shop, that'll be in someone's tank at home. Okay, so that's the anemone, that's the one that scared me, and it's actually turned out lovely. It's not been too bad. Hopefully a lot of people have seen that and seen, you know, it isn't as gruesome as I was sort of making out. You just go straight through, as long as you're prepared, as long as you know, move the tentacles out of the mouth, check the foot, know where you're going to cut, just a pair of scissors, straight through. You see people laying them out, you know, using knives and stuff, you can do that, but I've always used scissors. And I will note that if you've got 100 of these anemones from your production, trust me, you don't want to be sitting there cutting 100 of them in half with a blade. Grab a pair of scissors, get the clean cut, straight through, and that 100 could be 200, then 300, then 400, and as you've seen across the board, everyone's got these anemones somewhere, or wants to have them, or has seen them, and that is again from the cultivation and the propagation of this industry, from the demand of people wanting them, but not necessarily wanting to pay a lot of money for them. So we've gone to work, we've cultivated them, bring the price right down, and they're available across the board, you know, nice and affordable. So go back to the questions, and we'll carry on from there, mate.
Great stuff. Yep.
I'm not sure if you're going to cover this in a few minutes, but any way to do anything with like a cat filio or a trachea?
Absolutely. Trachea, you can. There's certain corals I'm going to list now that I do frag, but I would avoid fragging them. Scollies, you'll see people fragging them into pizza slices and stuff too. The only time I frag a scolly is if underneath the scolly it started to spawn a new one. I don't know if anyone's ever seen or heard of this. You heard of them yet? Some scollies upside down have a scolly on it. I will cut a scolly in half to take that scolly, expose it to the light, and within 6 months to a year you'll have another scolly. That's the only time I'll cut a scolly. I've never cut them in half. We have experimented with it. It takes up to 12 months to 2 years to regrow back. Tracheas will be similar, like a little bit less.
You cut through the mouth then?
Cut through the mouth, straight through the middle in half, always. And on certain corals you need to be almost, sounds silly, but exactly. Because if you're not, and it's a little bit to the side, you've done the coral no good. That will not, chances are, the smaller skeleton will struggle to that of the larger one. You might end up back to having one. So some corals avoid. Trachophilia definitely, Scolomia definitely. Funnily enough, Cinerina not so much. Cinerina, they have quite small skeletons anyway, and even if they have large skeletons, everyone see the flesh, the way they work. They're quite sort of, they're really weird. They're really thin-fleshed. So because they're so thin-fleshed, when I've cut them straight down the middle. Cinerina, you end up obviously with half one. Within 3 months to 6 months, you'll have it fully round out, and that Cinerina flesh will very quickly go back in place and be a whole Cinerina. So Cinerina you can propagate, but it's a very scary one. It's on the do or don't know. You know, there needs to be a lot more on it. But elegance, the skeleton needs to be at least sort of a good size and straight down the middle. No small skeleton stuff. Anything with a small walling skeleton, avoid fragging. You're putting it at jeopardy. That nice piece you've got, you could be turning into nothing or a tiny little nice piece, and the other one didn't quite make it. So you can cut them, just make sure they've got large skeletons. Shops will buy from myself at my wholesale facility skeletons like this and go away and make 4 hammers or 3 hammers and elegances and, you know, offer it that way, but they need to be a good size. Okay. What else is there to avoid? Obviously you've got big rounded LPS, really, apart from Cinerina. Just try and avoid fragging like the fleshy stuff, really fleshy stuff. You can frag it, but it's the rate of survival and the difficulty and the time in which it takes to grow back. It's almost not worth it. You're putting a lot at risk. We aren't on a level where it's so readily available to be playing with those kind of cultivation sort of tactics just yet, but you know, we will eventually have more sort of research into that, and hopefully a lot more successes. You know, as the technology gets better, you know, our tanks get more stable and more easier to, you know, maintain, and we should have some more successful cuts and corals that we didn't usually cut take off and do very well.
Great stuff. Any more questions, guys? No?
Happy indeed, yeah. If there's nothing else.
Nothing else no one needs to know, really. I think we pretty much covered it. These saws are expensive, so yeah, it goes back to what you're saying. They are expensive, but there is a few alternatives out there, or you've got your shops. You know, saws aren't always the way. So if you want to get started on fragging, start with soft corals and just go cheap and easy. And another thing I will say is, if you're worried about fragging a coral that you've got, go down to your shop, buy a little frag or a little sized version of it, and test frag it. And another thing is, if you have got access to a saw and you're worried about fragging, another good tactic I've done in my time before fragging, if I'm worried, is get a bit of polystyrene, cut it to the shape of the coral, frag it. It will work, and you can almost plan your cut before cutting with almost a replica. And it's a cheap, quick and easy way to just practice.
Alright, so I hope you enjoyed today, guys, and I hope you've learned something and go from this and yeah, all golden.
Great stuff, thanks Curt. Curt will be available in the shop throughout the day. He does have a display tank in the corner of the marine store downstairs, so please do. Any questions, pop over, see him. But Curt, thanks very much, been very gracious with your time, drafted in last minute. Yeah, thanks very much, thanks guys.